Let's talk about special zombies, perks, and complicated mission designs. I know that's the last thing that some people want to hear right now, but I promise we are going somewhere good with this. If you were to ask most people why they might include any of those things in their game, they would probably say something along the lines of that it provides more variety, more depth, more opportunity for choice, and it mixes things up a bit so that we're not doing the same thing again and again, year after year. And there is truth in that, but I think that it's not the whole story. I'd like to talk about one of the reasons why I think that these things are prevalent, how this can be a problem, and how this can be addressed. I'd like to put it to you that game design, in and of itself, is a game. So there are layers. You have your players who are playing humans versus zombies, and you have the moderators who are making rules for them. And the moderators are playing a game of their own where the moves available to them are the rules that they can make for their players, and their goal is hopefully to create fun for their players, although they may have other goals as well. A lot has been written in the literature on game design about player motivations, what players find satisfying and what keeps bringing them back to a game. And I would like to suggest that all of that applies to the moderators just as much as it applies to the players. In particular, one of the things that people like to do in a game is to explore. That includes exploring mechanics. That includes exploring the possibility space of all of the rules that they could give to their players and how they interact and what the consequences are. I don't think that it's necessarily a conscious choice on the moderator's behalf when they get carried away and indulge in game design and make things that don't work very well. I think it's just easy to get carried away when you're having fun, and designing specials is fun. It's not always a bad thing, too, when moderators indulge in game design, because a well-designed special or perk can add something to a game. It can add a good bit of variety, and hey, it can be fun. But a poorly designed one can be very bad. A poorly designed special can be confusing and feel arbitrary and just be frustrating to face. A very poorly designed one can actually remove depth and opportunity for choice from a game while having all of those problems. One of the potential consequences, perhaps the worst potential consequence of getting carried away with game design and making things that don't work very well, is players getting upset about how they died and rage quitting. Which brings me to an important distinction, because poor game design is not the only thing that causes this. Some players will get upset about how they died because they're really just upset about the fact that they died. This is a product of player culture and poor sportsmanship, and the erroneous perception that being a zombie is somehow losing, and it is a problem. But it is a separate problem from players who get upset about how they died because they really do have a good reason to feel that they didn't screw up, their opponent didn't do anything to earn that tag, there was just this arbitrary rule that made them lose, and they don't like that. I wonder if there might be some games that are seeing an increase in the latter and mistaking it for an increase in the former, which would be a problem, because if you attempt to address what is fundamentally a game design issue as if it were a player culture issue, not only is that not going to work, it could hurt a lot. Because if you brute force trying to change player culture, if you tell people that you are wrong for feeling the way that you do, and furthermore that you are ruining the game by feeling the way that you do, that's just going to create resentment. So let's not do that. If it And if it really is a game design issue that's at fault here, that is a problem with the moderators, not with the players, how should we address that? The simplest solution would be to just persuade the moderators to cut it out, to have a game with no specials, no perks, simple mission design only, focus on the basics and have a basically good baseline game. And that could work. That could work brilliantly in the short term, but I don't think that that's a good long-term solution because the temptation will always be there. People will always think, we could mix things up a bit. Could be interesting. Could be fun. So I think the wise solution in the long term is education. It is to educate moderators on how specials and perks and complicated mission design can go wrong and how they can be implemented and done right. My argument for this is via direct analogy with the argument for comprehensive rather than abstinence-only sex education. There are some people who are just going to do it. Even if you tell them not to, they're still going to do it. And in principle, I can understand and respect the reasons why you might want to just tell them to stop doing it. But in practice, I think that you can get better results by educating people as to the real reasons why doing it is not the greatest of ideas and on how they can do it not safely but less unsafely. Because it is not knowledge that leads to experimentation. It is ignorance that leads to experimentation. And experimentation conducted in a context of ignorance can have some really bad unintended consequences. And everything that I just said also applies to the other thing. So if there was one lesson that I wanted to impress upon moderators right now, it would be that your complexity budget really is very limited, and especially so for humans in combat. Humans vs. Zombies is a game that appeals to casual players, that is played in real time and that requires rapid reactions, and for humans, it is a high-stakes game. A single event can change the format of the game for them for the rest of the game. So that is pretty much the worst case for a complexity budget. Your complexity budget is practically nil. And when you overspend on complexity, the result is players being frustrated and not having fun. It's also worth noting that baseline Humans vs. Zombies already has a considerable amount of depth that follows naturally and intuitively from its rules. So if you try to expand the depth of the game by adding more rules, the potential rewards are not great, while the potential risks are. So please, keep it simple, and if you don't, be careful. Think it through. Thanks for listening.